Hey, what's up? It's Menta. Um, it's going to be a little bit more unscripted than it normally is. So I've been asked to talk about layering synths and my process, how I go about doing it. Um, so in order to do that, it's quite a difficult thing to go through because it's something you learn over time through experimentation and experience. But having said that, if I show you my process live, hopefully you can pick something up from that. So I've made a kick and bass with a sub simply, just for the sake of this. So it sounds like this. And basically what I'm going to do is quickly take you through the layering on that, just as kind of a little sneak preview of what's to come. And then we're going to write a melody live in real time, because how I tend to layer my leads is I find a character synth, a synth that I like the character of. I write a melody using that because a lot of the time the character of the lead gives me the inspiration for the melody. And then once the melody's written, I then process it, start layering it up and really fatten it up, but keeping that core character. So yeah, I'll show you what I mean. Very quickly, the sub is obviously just kick and sub. If you want to know more about kick and sub, check out the kick and sub processing, kick and bass processing on the channel. So it's just a hardstyle kick run through a nimble kick that sounds like this. Then there's this mid bass, which sounds like this. And then there's a little rolling bass, which sounds like this. All of those sound quite different, but if I build them up one by one, they combine together to give you quite a cool little texture. Each one's doing something a bit different. You've got the reverse bass, the standard hardstyle kick reverse bass, which kind of acts as its anchor. It's kind of the majority of the content. You've got the mid bass layer, which is a little bit crispier in the high end, gives you a little bit more of a wider, crispier top. And then you've got the roller, which kind of makes it a little bit more bouncy. So the processing on those is pretty straightforward as well. It's just a reverse bass shape, a little bit of EQ to take out the sub of those, and same EQ again, and the roller has just got a slightly different curve on it to make it sort of hit twice, one quiet, one loud. And that's that. So getting onto the lead, I'm going to start with, I'll show you the processing with and without as well, because I obviously use my lead processing chain, which I've also done a video on if you want to know more about how I process my leads. I tend to already have my lead chain process before I design the layers, so that it helps when it sounds just a little bit nicer, and I kind of want to know what it's going to sound like when it's done, as opposed to layering up everything dry, running it through all the effects and then going, oh, actually, I don't know if this sounds right. So I like to do it with the finished chain. So I'm going to start with just an ISILY2 preset from Stonebank's pack, which without any processing sounds just like this. With full processing on it, it sounds like this. And that's that. So I'm just going to basically loop this and see what we can come up with, and then we'll go from there and layer up. So we're in G minor, and what I like to do just at the moment in these days is start on the third We'll start on the lower third, I think. I also sometimes like to start on the offbeat. Kind of depends, but sometimes I like doing that. In this case, I think we will. So I also have just the mastering chain on, just so it sounds a little bit better for you listening. Go with something like this. Might need to be one more. I don't know. Right. It was too much. There we go. Bit in the middle. Maybe. I don't know if that really works as a resolution. We'll go up instead of down. No. I feel that's too high at the start. Hold on a minute. It's nothing special, but it works as a melody for the purposes of this. So that's our melody. We'll go with that. Now, before processing into these, I do like to chuck on, not a volcano, I do like to chuck on a Pro Q and just cut out the first like 200 hertz, just to keep everything clean in the mix long term. And I also like to chuck in a high cut, and I always do this. It's the only time I ever solo in the mix is pretty much when I'm taking off the extra sizzle in the top end of a lead. little notch is just to give it a little bit of bite. So there we go. What you could do actually, just to add some variation to this again, maybe not do that, but maybe do see that in context. What you can do here as well is we can add the little vibrato bits. Might be doing too much here, hold on. We take the fit from the start again. What kind of work? Might just keep it simple and just do that octave as well. drop out at the end. So slightly different. Maybe if we do it in the middle we could get a variation as well. Work. That's kind of a cool motif, but way too far away from what we need for this. Maybe we do that. Well, anyway, this melody's not going to be breaking any records, but it is something. It'll do. So basically, the first thing I do with that is I literally just chuck it on the exact same octave, and I'll just try and find something else that sounds kind of good on it. Hardcore's usually a pretty good one for a little bit more of a mono-y sound to it. The other thing you got to make sure you do is turn off the reverb and delay in the synth so that you don't get it interfering with your own reverb and delay that you're going to add in the bus later. Your vibrato, your legato is set to the same amount as well in every single instance of a synth. That's already sounding all right. We'll chuck through another couple of sounds in here. Let's have a look. What I like to do then is take it an octave above. Well, that kind of builds on the character a little bit. I quite like that. there was a problem here where the release of the synth was slightly higher than the others. So it was kind of, the notes ended in the MIDI and it was still kind of having that little cut off. And that could work in some instances, but in this one, it didn't sound right. Now, the thing that you'll find with this is a clear example of just, you kind of build it up over time with your ears, but if you listen to these layers individually at a minute, you can kind of hear that this layer is just like a stronger, slightly cleaner version of this layer. This has that kind of guitar-y kind of auto sound to it, whereas this one is more of a stronger saw. This one, I'd argue, sounds pretty crap on its own. However, when you put it in the mix and you like drop it by a load of volume, it kind of gives you this nice texture that you can't get. And it's like you start with that character synth, but then you're kind of finding, as well as support, you're kind of also finding more character and more texture out of your synth. So that immediately makes this stack sound completely different to how it did at the start, but in a way I think kind of enhances it. I keep going because this still needs more. It's not thick enough or anything yet. I usually go until I'm happy pretty much, and that's obviously an octave higher. Maybe we'll go the same octave again as the first two, but we'll try and find some maybe another texture that works. We always want to chuck in a nice big detuned lead. Just sits around, gives it a little bit more grip. It pushes it into the background, so it's slow, like you lower this down. When you take it off, something sounds like it's missing, but you can't tell what. It's just adding depth to it. One other thing I like to add into my stack is plucks. I like to add like plucks. Tend to be trance plucks I usually go with, but in this case, I think if we go with the higher octave again, and try and find a pluck, I think sounds good. And the key with the pluck layer is you want to go through and you want to take all of the portamento, all of the slide notes out, okay? So we don't get any interference in the pluck. Because that won't, as you could hear then, it doesn't sound good. So you drop these down, get rid of those, move that, get rid of that. I think that's all of them. And another thing you'll find, there's kind of multiple ways to add sort of attack to your lead stacks. One way is to have a little tiny pitch envelope on the start of a synth. I often do go through and do that with all of the synths as well at the end, which we'll do. But I also like to add in a pluck because it gives you an attacky character. that's more than just a pitch envelope. So here we go. You hear how much attack gets lost. That pluck layer immediately hits this more attacky sound. And then beyond that, we'll go away from Spire. I like to add just a pretty standard detuned super saw layer. Support saw from the Fruity Masters pack. It's a good one. We lower the porter time. The porter time of it's around 66 milliseconds, kind of matches up somewhat with I've found kind of sort of matches up well to about the 450 mark in Spire. It's not always perfect, but it's as good as it gets. Unfortunately, they measure it in a different way. So, and with this, we're going to have this on the lower octave as well. You can hear how much depth that's adding. Now if we look at span here, we've got a pretty even fullness on the lead. With stacking leads, especially when you introduce detuned super saws, the correlation meter is never going to sit at 1 for mono compatibility. As long as it's not dropping too much into the minus, you're fine. If we run this in mono, we aren't losing any of the sound. I mean, we're losing the width of it and the like sparkle and a bit of reverb, but it still sounds reminiscent of what it does in stereo. So it's kind of where I stop at that point, as long as it works. So with those, I then mentioned the pitch envelopes if they don't already have one. This one does not, so I do all oscillator pitch, drop these down, shut the depth up a little tiny bit, the amount up a little bit, so we get a nice bit of pitch from that. This one, we do the same. It's already got pitch, so we don't need to worry. This one has not. Nope. It's not, so we do the same again. I like to do this just to bring out a bit more attack. There we go. This one also, oh, this one does have it, just on the first oscillator, that's fine. This one doesn't have it. It's a pluck, doesn't need it. We don't need to worry, sorry. Forgot about that. And this also has it. So now every single layer we have here has an attacky hit on it. Now similarly to the first one, I then go through and chuck the EQ on just to clean up some bits. We'll do two things. One is the roughly 200 hertz cut, or basically wherever we need to. The second is just to get rid of the sizzly high end, to just clean it up, give us some headroom back. I'll do these with all of these. We'll do this quickly, and then I will go through and do a second step on all these. We'll come back to that. Pluck usually doesn't need too much, but now one quick pass I like to do. My lead processing these days has a few resonant notches where there's usually resonance. You'll probably hear them if I solo. A bit of resonance there. Bit of resonance there. And a bit of resonance there. I like to do this with every lead stack, but they're kind of like common hotspots that you tend to find resonant peaks. But I also like to just a quick listen in here and see if there's anything really bad. I should have also turned on all of these. I don't know why I didn't. Let me show you that again. Here we go. You can hear the resonance there and there. That's not that pleasant either. So yeah, get rid of those. But yes, individual layers as well. I tend to listen to just see. This one sounds like it has some. Oops. That's a bit of a problematic one. We'll get rid of that. Then that one. Don't want to overdo it because you don't want to lose the character of the sound, but there we go. So that's the processing of those. Where do you stop with layering? It's kind of, how long's a piece of string. I might get so far into writing a track that's got this sort of a lead stack, and then get to a point that I'm thinking, still needs more. It happens. But for now, if we listen to this in the mix, let's actually put some sidechain on. And that doesn't have a chord stack on it yet either. I'd say that sounds all right. So the other thing I do notice sometimes happens as well is you think, oh, this lead's not powerful enough, it doesn't stand enough on its own. But you got to remember that this needs some character, and it obviously needs character. It needs some support, but you also have support from your chords, pads, piano, if you want to play that in a drop as well. Like, there's so many like things you can layer up in a drop that isn't just the lead stack. And I think that's important to remember, that if you're feeling like your lead stack isn't powerful enough on its own, it's probably better to make sure that there's chords, pad, strings, piano, lots of other layers in your drop. And if once all those layers are there, your lead still sounds weak, even with all the support, then come back to it and continue thinking about what layers need to be added to thicken it up or anything. But in this case, I'd be fairly happy to use this stack in a track, I think. So the overall EQ, just for reference. This isn't actually balanced right. So I usually like my lead in my chain to be a bit louder than this. So that's pretty much that. That is how I go about making a lead stack. So if I'm in a track, I tend to either have a vocal to start with, or some sort of break or something. when it comes to writing the melody, whether I do it at the start, in the middle of the production, this is how I do it. So I don't always get a kick and bass, but I start out with just browsing a preset, finding a character I like that I think suits this track I'm writing, and I use the sound design of that to write a melody and then build around it, because I think that way it suits the melody a lot more if you're writing around the sound design and designing the sound around the writing. It kind of works both ways. But yeah, I hope this helped. If you've got any questions, let me know. Come and join me on Discord if you haven't already, if you want to chat more. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.